Now it's time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, who is to blame for the rising interest rates? I mean, for the first time in over a decade, the cost of a 5-year fixed-rate mortgage has exceeded 6%, although, to tell you the truth, when I first bought my own house, it was 5%, 6%, it was around about that anyway, so I think we're just coming back to what it should be, but following the hike in these rates, a lot of people are panicking. Estate agent Frank Knight also forecasted that tenants face a 20% increase in rental costs over the next 5 years. So what do you think? Is it down to the current Tory party infighting? Is it their behaviour? Is it their policies that have created this Kwasi Kwarteng's mini budget? Is it the Tory party's fault? Or is it, or do you think perhaps it is the Bank of England? Because, of course, Prime Minister Liz Truss has only been in number 10 for just over a month. They're already talking about new leadership challenges and getting rid of her. I mean, I'm sorry, we don't all want to laugh here, but, I mean, can somebody get on with running the country? What did they have? They had the recess for how many weeks? Then they had a recess for 4 weeks.
The period
or 6
of mourning.
weeks. Period of mourning. And then they had their party conferences. How much is that? What, 3 months now?
She's got 2 weeks. She's been in
She's been in for like 3 weeks. They want another leadership contest. They want another one. I don't think so. You're being paid over 80 grand. Get on with the job. There's been a row. More than that. Yes, sorry about that. And the expenses. There's been 60. Well, 160. Around about 160. Yeah. No, that's the voice of Olympic pick, by the way. Also joining me is Fraser Myers. He's deputy editor for Spiked Online. So, of course, what do you think? Do you think the blame lies on the doorstep of the Bank of England? Senior figures within the cabinet have blamed the Bank of England for its sluggishness in reacting promptly to rising interest rates in comparison to other countries. I mean, they also kept the quantitative easing going on for quite some time, too long, really. And then the architect of all of this, Rishi Sunak, sort of thought he'd offer his twopenny worth as well. But what do you think? It's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, who is to blame for rising interest rates? Well, I'm joined now by the Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs, Mark Littlewood. Mark, so with all of that, who do you blame?
Well, I don't really blame anybody. I'm glad interest rates are going up. I think we need to get away from this idea that low interest rates are a good thing for the economy. I think we've had interest rates way, way too low, going right the way back to the 2008 banking crash. If interest rates are low, well, that's good for borrowers. It's good for people who want to go and spend a lot of money that they don't have because they can do that on rather cheap credit. But it's very bad for savers. It's very bad for investors. And you would usually expect the interest rates to be a little above inflation. Still, even now with these interest rates, if you save £1 in your bank account, a year later, in real terms, it's only going to be worth about 95p. So we have penalised savers chronically. And it's about time that we get back to sensible interest rates to combat inflation. The reason they've been put up is to combat inflation. This is a global phenomenon, not a uniquely British phenomenon. You'll see the US Federal Reserve Bank is increasing their rates. The European Central Bank is increasing their rates. It's not unique to the Bank of England. And that inflationary problem has been caused in part by energy prices going through the roof because of the Ukrainian war, but also years of us living beyond our means, really. We've been printing money, quantitative easing, as you rightly call it, as the modern vernacular, but printing money, basically, and spending money we don't have. Sooner or later, that catches up with inflation, and one of the best ways to combat inflation is to hike up interest rates. I wish the bank had put them up even higher than they did a couple of weeks ago.
Well, you must have got a lot of money in the bank, but that depends on whether they actually bring that saving back to you, because a lot of the banks are being a bit sluggish about increasing their interest rates and savings. OK, so in your view, they should have been brought up in any way. A lot of people are saying that Kwasi Kwarteng's mini budget was to blame, though. A lot of people are saying that it would have gone up a lot more slowly had it not been for his budget. Do you think that's a fair assessment, or do you think that perhaps the banks saw this as an opportunity to jump on the back, blame Kwasi and chuck the rates up to where they should have been?
Yeah, I mean, the rates were put up before the mini budget and surprised many people because there was a lot of speculation that they probably put up the interest rates by 0.75 of a percentage point. They actually only put them up by 0.5 percentage point. So if anything, the bank didn't dial up to the level that was expected. I think the market's concern about the mini budget has been that the government has yet really to prove or to set out in granular numbers how they're going to get spending under control. They say in their speeches they're committed to it. I happen to believe that they are committed to it. But you actually need some charts and some numbers. They don't need to balance the books this year. That will be impossible, especially with the energy crisis. But they need to show the markets that they can balance the books over, 3-5 years, that sort of time horizon. And at the moment, That's lacking. It's a political promise, but there's no grounded economics behind it. They've got to fix that if they want the money markets to be rather less jittery. But I think we should brace ourselves. I mean, I'm loath to make too many forecasts. It's a mug's game often, especially in an uncertain world. But I think it's reasonable to say that we would expect interest rates to keep ticking up for a while. They're going to continue to go up. And that is, as you rightly said, Nana, this is basically a return to normality. It's been weird and abnormal to have interest rates so low for so long that if you save money, you're losing money. It has to be the other way round. There is no incentive to save with interest rates this low.
There's too much incentive to spend, actually. Mark, stay right there. I'm going to have a chat now to Peter Edwards. He's the former editor of the Labour List. Peter, thank you so much for joining me. So in your view, then, a lot of people blaming Kwasi Kwarteng for his mini budget. People saying that that's why they've hiked up so quickly, but apparently it's a global phenomenon. What's your view?
Well, there's lots of different things going on, and I think the Bank of England deserves some scrutiny. Their target for inflation is 2%. We're currently running at 10%. But overall, I think fingers have to be pointed at the government. It's a bit like the cost of living crisis. We've had the same government in one form or another for 12 years. These problems don't come out of nowhere. The reason we're, for example, reliant on other nations for our food and our energy supply is because of a lack of government planning. And then the reason why we've had such a bad market reaction to the mini budget, and then around 1,000 mortgage products withdrawn immediately after Kwasi Kwarteng spoke, is because the markets didn't like the Tory mini budget. And that wasn't just because of cold, rational economic decisions. That was part of it. It's because they feared yet again a triumph of ideology over economic good sense. And lots of these things are simple facts rather than me as a left-wing person giving a view that could be partial. So to give you one fact, the Bank of England having to spend £65 billion, which it wouldn't otherwise done, to shore up the pension industry. And it did that as a direct result of the Tory budget.
Well, the Bank of England shore up lots of things. So I want to bring Mark back in, because, Mark, Peter said that the Bank of England shoring up things to the tune of 65 billion is, I think he's suggesting it's a result of the budget and things. What's your view? Is that the case? I thought they did that sort of thing anyway.
Well, they do those sort of things anyway. We've had extremely bizarre, without getting too technical about it, pensions rules about how pensions can be invested, which then make them extremely dependent on the gilt rate, so extremely vulnerable to these sort of changes in interest rates. I think we need to look at that, completely changing those rules, liberalising them somewhat. But I do have some sympathy with what Peter said. This has been a long build-up over a long period of time. I'm not going to make a partisan point, so let's go all the way back to 2001. A Labour government was in office then. That's the last time any government balanced the books. We've gone for more than 20 years of budget deficits. This really is a structural underlying problem in the economy. Sure, if you're getting through a crisis, COVID, an energy crisis, a war or whatever, you'd expect to borrow more money in that year and the government to spend more than it's bringing in tax receipts. But we've got ourselves into a position in which the government is spending beyond its means in the good times and way beyond its means in the bad times. We haven't balanced the books for 20 years or so, and I blame politicians of all stripes for that. And I wouldn't expect the Truss administration to be able to correct that legacy of 20 years of overspend in merely its first 4 weeks in office. But some government somehow is going to have to face up to this and start balancing the books and deal with the underlying structural problems in the economy. I think you were saying earlier, Nana, once you take out the Queen's mourning period and recess, Liz Truss has only had something like 2 weeks or 14 working days in the job or something. So I'm loath to blame her yet. But we do need a reset, whether it's under this government, under a future Labour government. We have been living beyond our means for way too long, and there needs to be a reckoning up about that and some economic reality about getting back to balancing the books and indeed, in the better times, in the good times, actually running budget surpluses. But we are way, way away from that, and I hope parties of all stripes start to face up to that economic reality, because if you keep spending like there's no tomorrow, eventually there won't be.
That's pretty true. Thank you for that. On that bombshell, thank you very much to both of you. Peter Edwards, former editor for the Labour List, and also Mark Littlewood. He's the Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs. Thank you so much to the both of you. What do you think? If you just joined me, welcome. This is GB News. I'm live on TV, online and on digital radio. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Callum says Boris Johnson is responsible, amongst others, for his obsession with lockdowns, net zero and Putin.
Yeah.
Brad says world markets are to blame. It's not just the UK, as some would make us believe. Tim says globalisation. I was going to say that. I was exactly right. I wrote that down, Tim. Globalisation is to blame, and we haven't got the highest rate of inflation. Other countries are suffering more than us.